Oh my gosh, you guys, I've been waiting for leaf blowers to stop for so long now, and I think we finally caught a break, so I'm gonna start filming this. Hopefully it goes fine. Hello guys, and welcome back to another one of my videos. If you're new here, my name is Holly, and today I thought I would do a bit of a true crime case. I thought I would dabble because it's something that I'm really interested in, so maybe some of you guys are really interested in this sort of stuff too. And the case I wanted to do today is the case of the Somerton man. I would say this case is one of Australia's biggest unsolved cases. It is so interesting, so without further ado, let's get into it. So this all starts on December 1st, 1948. A male body was found slumped on a seawall on Somerton Beach, which is in South Australia in Australia. So when the body was found, it was cold to the touch. His legs were extended and his feet were crossed, and he was also wearing a suit. When the news came out that this man was dead, it actually came out that a lot of people had seen him the night before, so November 30th. I know there was reports of one couple that had seen him slumped against the wall the night before. They had taken notice of him because of his position, but they saw that he had almost moved his arm upwards as if he was lighting a cigarette. And so, you know, at that point they were like, well, he's alive, and they just assumed that he was super drunk or something like that. Now I looked at where this beach is, and it's a pretty busy area. It is like right in the heart of Adelaide, so there is now, at least there is a lot of pubs and clubs and stuff around that area, and I can imagine even back then there was probably quite a few pubs and stuff too. So the idea of someone having a drunken snooze on the beach isn't the weirdest thing in the world. I know I've definitely seen people early morning having a bit of a drunk snooze on the beach before. I mean, I've never done it personally myself, stranger danger, but I know that it is not the weirdest thing. But yeah, unfortunately by the next morning he had passed away. So the police were called, and a few hours later he made it to the Royal Adelaide Hospital, where his body was looked over. So upon looking at the body, they found a train ticket, a tram ticket, they found cigarettes, they found matches, they found chewing gum, they found 2 combs and a handkerchief. I don't know why he had 2 combs. The guy must have really liked doing his hair or something. But the weirdest part of it was he had no form of identification. He had no wallet, no ID, nothing. So they couldn't work out who he was. But they didn't think too much of it. They thought that someone would come forward pretty soon to claim this body, and they would be able to work out who it was. They also completed a full autopsy on this man, and when they did this, they found that his pupils were smaller than the average size, and his spleen was actually larger. I think it was about 3 times larger than a normal spleen, and these signs would indicate that there was poisoning, because as well as this, the liver was full of blood. He also had food in his stomach. Apparently it was from his last meal, which had been like a pastry thing, which is kind of irrelevant, but there you go, the man liked a pastry, don't we all? But they tested his body, they tested the food to see if there was any traces of poison, and there wasn't. So this sort of confused medical staff, because all the common types of poison that people would use, none of them were in there. They were all pretty easily traceable, and yeah, nothing turned up. I must add though, there was at the time at least 1 or 2 different types of poison that you could use, though they were very uncommon, but they wouldn't be traceable in the body. They would just disintegrate over a quick amount of time. So there was that option, but like I said before, those poisons were not very common to be used as poisons at all. So yeah, it was just a very confusing case. A few days and then weeks passed, and still no one had recognized or claimed this body. By this point, the case was really quite well known within Australia, just because it was such a strange one. I mean, this man appeared to have been poisoned, but there was no evidence of it, and he had no ID, no one had claimed him, and he was fit too. He was a middle-aged man, but he was very physically fit. The other thing was, he didn't seem like a labourer. His hands were really clean and well kept, which would imply that he was working in some sort of higher up position. But the fact that he was so fit was strange, because how did it happen to this man? How did he end up dead on this beach? Did he poison himself, or did someone somehow manage to do it to him? By this time, photos of him were printed all over newspapers, photos of his face especially, and many people said that they thought they might recognize him, and so they actually went to see the body to see if they did, but nothing came of this. No one could work out who this guy was. By early January, police realized that they needed to tackle this case from a different aspect. They realized that they probably weren't going to get any leads at this point from the public, so they started to search railway stations, dry cleaners and hotels in the hopes that maybe something would come up that would give them a bit more of an idea of who this man was. And it worked. At the railway station, there was a case that had not been claimed since the 30th of November, so police took this and they analysed it. The case itself contained pretty normal stuff that you would expect from a case of someone who's been travelling. It had slippers, undies, spare change of clothes, it had string that you would use to repair clothes, just basically personal care type items. Again, there was no form of ID or anything in there, but a couple of items did have a label on it, or I should say it had items in it that had a label on them, because the actual label on the side of the case had been torn off, and all the clothes labels had been torn off, both in the case and on the body of the Somerton man. But the three items that had a label on them had the name Keen or Keen T, but police searched this name to see if anyone was missing by this name and nothing came up. So police at this point were really stumped. So they decided to bring in a pathology expert by the name of John Cleland to relook at the body and relook at the belongings to see if he could find anything. And in April of 1949, he found the final piece of evidence. He found a small piece of paper in the pair of trousers that the Somerton man was wearing, and this piece of paper had been previously missed because it was in almost like a watch pocket, which was inside a pocket, and it was sort of shoved in there so you wouldn't have easily been able to find it. But Cleland did, and on this piece of paper there were the typed words Taman Shod, and that was all. It was a little piece of paper that looked like it had been ripped out of a newspaper or a book or something. So police investigated this and they found that the piece of paper was from a Persian poetry book from the 11th century called The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. I really hope I didn't butcher that. I'm really sorry if I did. But this book had actually become popular in Australia during the wartime. It wasn't necessarily uncommon to own a copy of this book. What was particularly weird about finding this piece of paper in the Somerton man's pocket was when translated, the meaning of those words meant it has ended or it has finished. And so previously the police hadn't really been sure if this was a suicide or a murder, but I think to a lot of people it really encouraged the suicide theory, just because how bizarre that you are found deceased and those words are what is found in your pocket. I mean, how does that happen? So police understandably were pretty interested in trying to find this book, and so they searched local libraries, bookstores, and they put out a request for anyone who had this book and had those words missing from the book to come forward. And at first no one came forward. In fact, for a few months they heard nothing on this book. So at the same time, the Somerton man's body was starting to decompose, so the police made the decision to embalm the body. They took a cast of the face and the shoulders up to about there, and then they actually buried the body at a local graveyard. And on a side note, there was a whole bunch of people that came together who paid for the body to be buried. They paid for the coffin and they paid for the burial and the tombstone, and I don't know, I just thought that was quite nice that a whole bunch of people who obviously didn't know who he was still put that time and effort into respecting the body. But back to the case, we fast forward a few months later and a man comes forward. I don't know his name because he wished to remain anonymous, but he came forward and he basically told police that he had had this poetry book appear on the back seat of his car when he had parked it at Somerton Beach. He said he had no idea where it had came from and he thought it was really weird at the time. He said his window had been cracked open a little bit at the time, so although it was weird, it wasn't like the biggest thing. I don't know about you, but if I found a book on my back seat, I definitely wouldn't be telling the police at first. I'd probably just think it was some random weirdo who had wanted to get rid of their book for whatever reason. And the crazy thing was, this book that the man brought forward had a piece torn out the back that exactly matched the one in which police had. Upon further investigation of this book, the police found at the back there was a code which to this day hasn't actually been cracked, and below that there was a phone number. The phone number in this book belonged to a lady who literally lived a 5-minute walk down the road. So police went to question her about the case and whether she knew the man. The lady's house that police went to was a lady who went by the name Jo Thompson. She was about 27 years of age when this all happened. When police asked her if she knew the poetry book, she actually said that it was her favorite poetry book. So police were pretty excited by this, but when they asked her where her copy was, she said she'd given it away during the war. She said she'd given it to a man by the name of Alfred Boxall. Police said that when they questioned her further, she was pretty standoffish. She didn't really want to talk. And this to me is the craziest part of this whole case. They also took a photo of the Somerton man with them and they asked her if they knew him. And when she saw the photo, police said she looked as if she was about to faint. They described her as looking completely taken aback, but she continued to deny knowing this man. And look, I don't know, they were showing her a photo of a man who was deceased. I don't know if I'd look like I was about to faint if I saw a photo like that too when I wasn't necessarily expecting it. But at the same time, she was a nurse, so you would think she would be used to seeing people who are near or have passed away. So would that in itself been enough to make her almost faint? I don't know. Police did investigate Alfred though. They thought he might be the Somerton man, but it turned out that he was alive and well, and he actually still had his copy of the Rubaiyat too. And he had a phone number in there too. So it meant that there was 2 books with her phone number in it, which in itself is kind of weird. They had met through a mutual friend and seemed to hit it off. So they spent a night together. I don't know what they did on that night together. That was not disclosed. And the next day she gave him the copy of her book as a parting gift. So when police came to this dead end, there wasn't really much else they could do. They had looked at all leads and nothing had come up. The code in the back of the book was never cracked, and Jo never disclosed anything about the Somerton man to anyone. And in 2007, she sadly passed away. So if she knew anything about him, she kept that secret to her grave. But the investigation was closed, and for about 60 years, nothing more came of it. This is until a man named Derek Abbott started investigating the case. I want to add here, there's actually been a few people that have been investigating the case, and Derek actually started investigating the case with another gentleman, but for whatever reason, they no longer investigate together. And we're just going to focus on Derek. So when he started looking into this case, Jo unfortunately had already passed away, but Derek wanted to find if there was any surviving ancestors of her that may know something on this case. And this is when he found out that she had had one son by the name of Robin Thompson. It was really unfortunate, but 2 months prior to Derek finding out about Robin Thompson, he had actually passed away. But a friend of Robin actually disclosed that Jo Thompson's husband was not the father of Robin. Jo had married her husband before Robin was actually born, but yeah, he was not his dad. So Derek started to investigate this. The thing about Robin Thompson is he was actually quite a well-known ballet dancer, which meant that although he had passed away, there was quite a few photos and videos of him that Derek used to compare to the photos of the Somerton man. What he actually found from these photos is that the Somerton man and Robin have a very particular ear shape that isn't very common with a lot of people. As you can see in these photos, the ear lobe sort of connects with the ear quite low, which, as I said, isn't a very common feature. And they also had similar teeth too, but the bodies won't be able to be compared very easily because Robin got incinerated when he passed away. But you guys, thankfully there is a resolution to this dilemma. As I said, the gentleman investigating the case was named Derek, and Derek actually got in contact with the daughter of Robin, whose name is Kate. She is the granddaughter of Joe, and so they got in contact. They had a dinner together to chat about the case because obviously it was something that interested both of them, and apparently they got engaged the next day. Some people are saying to Derek that he only got engaged to her because he wanted her DNA, but you guys, who am I to judge? I mean, I don't know them personally, and so DNA testing obviously wasn't around at the time when the Somerton man was found, but forensics had been able to pull hairs from the cast that they had made from his face and body before they buried him to test those for DNA. Now, Robin had already passed away, as I've said, but Kate is still alive and well. But the thing about hair DNA is it doesn't really provide that much in terms of evidence, and they haven't been able to link them in any way. And so for this reason, Derek has been pushing to get the body exhumed so they can give it a real good look and see if there is any matching DNA between Kate and the Somerton man, because he is potentially her grandfather. And as of about 2 weeks ago, the body has been exhumed, and at this point in time they are currently investigating it and they are seeing if there is any match. Because I guess if there is a match, although it doesn't explain how the death happened, I guess it gives us a bit of an idea as to maybe why it happened. So as I've just brushed over, the first theory is that the Somerton man was a past lover of Joe. Maybe she didn't want people to know that she knew him because of this. And at the time, the son was only 1 year old, so I wouldn't be surprised if she just didn't want him to know who his father was. At the time, having a baby out of wedlock was quite a scandal, so I can imagine there were a lot of people that didn't disclose who the father of their child was if they weren't married to them. Another theory is that he might have been a spy. It was not uncommon for there to be spies in the area at the time. Where he died was just a few hundred miles from one of the most top secret British rocket testing sites in the world. And if you think about it, there is a lot of countries out there that at the time would have wanted to know what was going on. And if anyone was to find out he was a spy, it would make sense that they would kill him. I mean, you wouldn't want that sort of information going back to your enemies. It's suggested that the poison could have been administered to him through the cigarettes he was smoking. But you guys, we might never know. All we can do is hope that by them recently bringing the body back up, we can find some more evidence that gives us some more answers about this case, because it really is a mind-boggling case. I think that the lack of identification in itself is enough for me to wonder if he was a spy. I know that there was a name written on some of the items in the suitcase, but seriously, if you're going to go to the effort of not having ID and not having clothing labels and all of that stuff, I doubt you're gonna forget that you have 3 different things labeled with your name. But yeah, you guys, that's basically all the information I have on this case. I really hope you enjoyed this one. It is the first case I have done in over a year, and so I definitely feel quite rusty. I hope that everything makes sense. I feel like I was a little bit all over the place, and I promise that the next case I bring, I'll definitely know a bit better how to put everything in place and make it make more sense. I also wanted to quickly say before I go that how cute are these earrings? They are from my friend's little business, the Aurora Collective, and I'm going to link her down below. I'm literally obsessed. But yeah, that brings me to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I really hope I will see you in my next video. I'm definitely going to be making some more crime videos, so keep your eyes peeled for those. Give this video a like if you liked it, and let me know in the comments below what you think potentially happened to this man. I'd be so interested to know what you guys think. And yeah, you guys, hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye, you guys.